We're here this morning talking to Nihal Ameresekere of Sri Lanka. Mr. Ameresekere was a high-level official in the Sri Lankan government for many years. He was also a private sector senior consultant on World Bank and USAID funded projects in Sri Lanka, and he became aware of pervasive corruption in government and private sector arrangements, and he became a witness to these acts of illegality, fraud, and corruption, and ultimately a whistleblower in the last 10 years. So, Nihal, I wanted to ask you first a little bit about your background and what are your credentials and your professional background that put you in a position to become aware of what was happening?
First, let me thank you, B, for having me here this morning. And also, I would like to add on a statement to what you said. The greed by a few exploiting and robbing the resources of the people overcomes the needs of the many, resulting in abject poverty, and then there comes in aid agencies with so-called poverty reduction programs.
What happened with the government of Sri Lanka and the problem of corruption is that private citizens and small groups of people with connections to government and international aid agencies appropriated large amounts of public wealth for their own benefit. And this was an especially serious problem in Sri Lanka because the country was affected by a long-term, brutal, violent civil war that destroyed the livelihoods, the families, and the homes of many people who, in the aftermath of the war, needed support from the government to reestablish themselves economically and socially. They were unable to secure that support because people well connected to the government or working in government had themselves depleted the national treasury, and as a result, people who suffered from war and displacement now suffer from poverty and deprivation. When did you first realize in your professional career that there was a widespread problem of corruption and fraud at high levels of government?
Actually, it was a personal experience of mine on the infamous Hilton fraud, where because of the litigation I brought in, the government saved $207 million in 1995 from paying Japanese companies Mitsui and Taisei. The auditors were Ford, Ruth Thornton and Company. I complained about the fraud to the Securities and Exchange Commission and to the Attorney General, who took no action, resulting in me filing the first derivative action in law in Sri Lanka and succeeding and winning and getting the write-off from the Japanese.
And that's what you've done, actually. We should mention that you've published 13 books about specific transactions and industrial sectors that were affected by fraud and corruption. And these books are a remarkable compilation of documents and analysis setting out exactly how these various transactions took place. Can you explain a little bit, say, about the process of privatization of the facilities of the port of Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka, and how that process was affected by fraud?
First and foremost, Beatrice, I have not made any allegations. As you know, I documented a series of 13 books that is to document my experience in combating fraud and corruption. It's very voluminous books in detail, and those books document real case studies. I have not expressed opinions, I have not made allegations, but set out the facts in the correct perspective as to what happened. So it's an exposure of all the cases I have done. In all these cases, I started the concept of public interest litigation in Sri Lanka, and we were successful at the highest level of the judiciary in Sri Lanka by the Supreme Court. I was amazed because when I was advisor Minister of Finance, I had to attend a meeting with the IMF officials one day at Central Bank, and they had a list of projects and deadlines of privatization. So I realized that these are all reforms being pressurized or led or dictated to by international donor agencies. Here I was before the IMF mission, and I said, no, things can't be done like this fast. And in doing this fast pace, enough room for manipulators to manipulate and take on large state assets at unbelievable prices.
And I've read the book about the privatization of the bunkering facilities in the port of Colombo, and apparently an industry and a facility that functioned quite well and provided sustainable resources to the government of Sri Lanka as a result of providing services to shipping traffic through the region, was given over to a private company, which then appropriated the revenues that resulted, rather than giving those revenues to the state of Sri Lanka. Is that what happened?
Yes, that is only one part of it. But the facilities in the port could never be privatized. Those are essential factors for the port. Our law does not permit alienation of any part of the port.
Oh, I see.
So against the basic norms of law, people have acted, governments have acted, and in all the privatizations, private sector is not going to go after some loss-making asset operation. They are the most profitable assets, and privatization deals are manipulatively done, and this whole word of privatization becomes stinking. Most of the private sector organizations, if not all, will eye the most profitable state ventures and manipulatively or otherwise try to take them over with the greed for profit or growth.
You said earlier that you pioneered the process of public interest litigation in Sri Lanka. Now here in the United States, when we work with whistleblowers and we try to combat fraud or corruption in business and government, very important aspect of what we do depends on an independent judiciary system and a free press. Do you feel that you had access to an independent court system in Sri Lanka and a free press, or was that a problem in terms of getting your message to the public?
Twofold questions. One is about the judiciary. At that time, I fought the Hilton case. I must say, the judiciary was impeccably independent. I had a leading President's Counsel advisor to the then President of Sri Lanka as a defendant, but still I won. I am sorry to say, not only me, many of my colleagues who are mainly lawyers complain that judiciary independence has got eroded. I would say this has happened mainly because the opposition in Sri Lanka is weak. There is the absence of political opposition to hold the government in check and balance. On the media, I think all of the world, media is not a angel, as it were. Media also can have its own agenda.
Could I just ask you in general, since you have been a witness, what have you learned about the way the political system operates, and what could be done perhaps to address the worst problems that you've seen?
People are, though they may be soft, passive and silent, does not necessarily mean that they endorse the system of endemic corruption. Greed by a few, plundering the resources of the people, affects the needs of the poor, resulting in their disillusionment, subversion, and ultimately leading to social injustice and perhaps justifiable rebellion. More and more I got involved in it. It was like getting involved in a mire which I got more and more committed. The more and more oppression, obstruction, pressures I be subjected to, the more and more courageous I became. Mm-hmm. I go on record to say that when somebody asked me, aren't you risking your life? I said, life is always not a risk. You are born on one day and you die another day. And that cannot be changed at all. And you live the life the way you want until that time comes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beatrice, for having me this morning, and thank you for the opportunity of this interview. Thank you very much.